Okay, roll call attendance. Alford, Charles Ketchen, are you on?
I'm on now, Lucy.
Thank you. And I'm from Alford, I'm on. Lucy Prashker. From Egremont, George, are you on?
Yes.
Tom Burkle, are you on?
Yes.
Great. And Danelle Kelly, are you on? Danelle is absent as of now. Great Barrington, Steve Bannon, are you on?
Yes.
Deb Phillips,
Yes.
Peter Taylor.
Yes.
Great. Monterey, Don Coburn.
Yes. Yes.
Great. John Silber,
Yes.
Laura Rodriguez.
Hi.
Hi. From New Marlboro, Susan Smith was not able to join. Jane Burke, are you on?
Yep.
Great. Tara White.
Yes.
Wonderful. Sheffield, Bonnie Silvers, I saw you. You're on, correct? Bonnie? Bonnie, are you on? All right, we'll come back to Bonnie. Nadine Hover,
Yes, here.
great. Colin Smith,
Present.
great. Stockbridge, Patrick White, are you on?
Yes.
Great. Sean Steven? Sean is not on. Nick Fredsel? Not on. West Stockbridge, Marie Ryan?
Yes, and
Ma-
Lucy, I did see Bonnie on there, so she maybe
I-
didn't hear you.
I did too. We'll come back to her. Molly Thomas?
Here.
Great. And Roger Kavanaugh, you're on,
I'm on.
correct? Okay, Bonnie, are you on?
Yes.
There she is.
Okay, great. All right. So the members I have absent are Susan Smith, Sean Stephen, Danelle Kelly, and Nick Fredsel. Just want to pause and make sure none of those members are on. Okay, so we have a skinny agenda, but a very full and comprehensive set of presentations. It's going to be a very meaty meeting. So the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from November 30, 2021.
Motion to approve.
Those were circulated in advance of the meeting. I noticed that Sean Stephen was marked both present and absent. And I think he did join a little bit late. So we're going to take him off the absent list. You see he's marked as joining at 5:06 p.m. So with that amendment, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Was that you, Nadine?
That was Deb.
Oh, Deb, thank you.
Second.
Who's the second from?
Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Chuck Ketchen.
I don't believe I was there, Lucy.
Okay, are you abstaining?
I am abstaining.
Okay. Lucy's in favor. George,
Yes.
Tom Burkle,
Yes.
Steve Bannon,
Yes.
Deb Phillips,
Yes.
Peter Taylor,
Yes.
Don Coburn,
Yes.
John Silbert,
Yes.
Laura Rodriguez,
Yes.
Jane Burke,
Yes.
Tara White,
Yes.
Bonnie Silvers,
Yes.
Nadine Hover,
Yes,
Colin, are you going to abstain?
Yes, I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, Patrick White? Marie Ryan,
Yes.
Molly Thomas,
Yes.
and Roger Kavanaugh.
Abstain.
Okay. Great. Before we get started, we have some representatives on from the respective unions of the two school districts. I want to introduce them and welcome them to the planning board discussions. We're so very grateful and appreciative of your willingness to carve some time out of your very busy schedules to help us move through this process. So I can't see everybody, so I'm going to ask you to jump in and introduce yourself. I do see Amy there from Berkshire Hills Regional School District. Maybe we can start with you, Amy.
Sure. Hi, I'm Amy Salonetti. I teach kindergarten at Muddy Brook. And I'm just here to listen in on the plans and, give you any information you might need about Muddy Brook.
Great, thank you. Thank you for participating. Audrey, are you on? Okay, Audrey Console, is that how you pronounce her name, Peter? Audrey is going to be a representative on the planning board from the paraprofessional, I believe, bargaining unit. And she is Monument Mountain, correct, Peter? Okay, and then Peter Carlotta, okay. I don't know if Peter's on. Are you, Peter? All right, he is district maintenance at Berkshire Hills, and he is going to be serving as an alternate. On the Southern Berkshire Regional School District side, we've got Christine Martin. Christine, are you on? Yes,
Yes,
I
hi.
see you. Hi.
Yeah, I'm Christine Martin. I am the president of the SBREA, the Education Association. I teach English as a second language, K through 12 in the district. And I'm happy to represent the SBREA on your meeting calendar.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Is there anyone else from Southern Berkshire Regional School District as a union representative, Beth? Is there anyone else on?
Christine, I don't know if who else you chose.
This being an initial meeting for me, there may be
Just
somebody
you?
in another meeting.
Okay.
But
Okay,
right now, it's just me.
great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you to all the members of the public who have joined our meeting tonight. As I said, it's going to be a full and comprehensive discussion by our research team. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Jake Eberwein, who's our project manager, to get us started. I would ask planning board members to hold questions and comments until the end. We have promised that there's going to be a public comment period at the end of this meeting. And so I want to make sure that we reserve time for that. We do have another meeting scheduled for Wednesday, which will allow for a lot more discussion by planning board members. The presentation on Wednesday's meeting will be more of a summary of what we've covered already over the last 9 months or so of the research team's work. But tonight is primarily Jake's team's presentation on indicators of educational quality and CVTE possibilities. So Jake, you've got the floor.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. We really appreciate your participation and your interest and your engagement. I just also really want to thank all the folks who've been a part of helping us to put together information in getting to where we are today. As Lucy pointed out, we really felt it important to talk a bit about education, and then specifically about career vocational technical education as a separate presentation. We've done some presentations to subcommittees over the course of our work, but we really felt that these two topics warranted really consideration and access to everybody, by everybody. So today, Rob Putnam and I will be reviewing in very, hopefully succinct form, some educational quality indicators across the school districts in the county. I just want to start by saying that, as Lucy pointed out, we have sort of a rough schedule that we continue to work from, and that is that today we're going to be doing presentations on education and career vocational tech ed. On Wednesday, I will be doing an overview of data and then setting up sort of the models for a report that will really be an analysis of the models with some recommendations that it looks like will happen sometime in early March. So we know that there's still a lot of flexibility in the process as we go forward. So again, just wanted folks who haven't necessarily been at the table in prior meetings to sort of understand where we are headed into the future. And I'll review this again on Wednesday too. So we're going to jump into education, and I just want to start by just a few sort of caveats to start the presentation. We're going to give you a lot of information today. It's going to feel like a lot, but it also is really just very, we really feel like we're skimming the surface in some ways. As I said, it's a lot, and it feels like it's also not that much. We have a lot more to do, and all our work and analysis and research will likely continue through any decision for any potential solution or model that the board and the community prefers or decides to enact. There's always things we've missed and things we haven't captured. And I do really want to, again, thank the schools and the administrative teams for really access in a year that's been incredibly complicated and very difficult, with COVID being really something they've had to navigate in real time on a day-to-day basis. We are building tools that allow us to really look at models and scenarios in flexible ways down the road. So nothing we say is set in stone, and we hope that these tools will help you all to make decisions. And then finally, a lot of what we're going to tell you today, you probably already know. So we reinforce that in hopefully some sort of organized manner. So we do think that there's something here, and we understand there's a decision between becoming larger, maintaining some degree of size as we currently exist, or certainly preferring or deciding not to do anything at all. Either way, we think there's some real possible opportunities for the two districts as we consider the three options of collaboration, shared high school, and regionalization. So we're going to give you a few things to think about today from the vantage point of educational indicators. So our first thing we want to just emphasize is that when we think about educational quality, it really is a matter of perspective. Defining educational quality is somewhat complicated to do, and we'll start with just a poll. A lot of folks know from Phi Delta Kaplan, they do a poll nationally on the state of American public schools, and what they find is that people rate their local schools much higher than they rate the schools in neighboring communities in their state or even in the nation. And it is really important to understand that our perspective is often driven by what we know and what we see close to home. But defining quality is a complicated problem that educators and economists have struggled with. And as is pointed out in the quote down below, there's really very little consensus on exactly what quality means. And just to be sort of illustrate that point one more time, this quote from Sheeran's, which we're using as model to some degree, says that really the quality of education is one of those things that may be the world champion of indefinable tasks. So, but we are going to take it on today and talk about some of the indicators we believe will help to illustrate things that are happening in the schools and can be potential opportunities. The second assertion we have today is that the quality of schools really matters. As we know from research, this sort of synthesis on this slide, basically, when educational attainment goes up, when quality is high and attainment is high, the bad things go down and the good things go up. So things like malnutrition, crime, mortality, reliance on social subsidy go down as educational attainment goes up, and things like earning and health indicators and really community health ultimately go up when attainment increases. So we all, I think, are at the table because we care greatly about education. We understand the value of it. And it's just an important thing to start with as we sort of launch into this presentation today. I will just reinforce that these presentation slides will be available. I'll put them on the website right after. We're going to be going relatively quickly through the slides. So there may be things you want to go back and study. We'll make sure those are available for you. This is sort of the why of the Regional School District Planning Board. And again, I'll talk a little bit more in depth on Wednesday about how we got to where we are, but I just want to reinforce it for the presentation today. We really, this work is really about a vision for South County, with a goal really to explore whether there's ways in which we can increase quality opportunity for students and ultimately improve outcomes while maintaining and efficiencies and sort of limited resources, within limited resources. So my third assertion is that schools prepare students, which seems sort of pretty simple. But as we think about what schools are doing today, we also understand that we're preparing students in an incredibly rapidly shifting world. And our graduates are entering a world that is probably unlike any other previously. Our students need to be ready for college. They need to be ready for post-secondary training. They need to be ready for career. Really a world that's shifting almost on a daily basis in terms of work, life, social, and politics. So that really creates a challenging task for us as schools to really think broadly about what we do in schools. Currently, there's an effort across a number of Berkshire County schools called the Portrait of a Graduate, including Monument, in which schools and high schools are really thinking very broadly about moving beyond just the academic foundations and thinking more deeply about what are the competencies, skills, and dispositions, and even experiences that we need to make sure students have before they graduate from high school in order to be successful, both in college and in career and in life. And this is just an illustration of a draft document that's been created in Berkshire County related to the Portrait of a Graduate that's been supported through the Barr Foundation. So for some of you who were at the at a presentation by Bill Daggett in 2018, you remember this slide probably. He talked a lot about how the world of future is not going to look a lot much like it looked in the past. And this particular slide, which is incredibly busy, just talks about work in the future and how automation, and artificial intelligence, computers will really change the world of work. And so as a result, we have to think deeply about what we're doing with students in preparing them for the kinds of pathways and in careers that require and demands different kinds of work habits and skills and competencies. So I'm going to pass it off to Rob, and we're going to start jumping into some of the indicators.
Thank you, Jake. An assessment of educational quality requires an examination of indicators that capture the quality patterns, progress, indicators that can be examined over time and against benchmarks, such as regional, state, and national indicators, indicators that can be disaggregated by student subgroup. Our work focused on indicators used in educational research and drawn from education reform models used by nationally recognized groups. Next, please. For this project, we identified indicators used by national organizations working with districts to improve educational outcomes. While each model has its own particular emphases, they all include indicators on a shared vision, leadership, research and evidence, resources, teacher professional growth, time and community engagement. The two models that you see highlighted here are because they were used at some point by the districts involved in the planning board. The Coalition for Essential Schools was in Southern Berkshire, and Spring Point is actually currently being used by Berkshire Hills. Next slide, please. As I said, educational indicators are descriptive data. that provide objective information on key aspects of school that are associated with educational quality. Next, please. Our research was based in part on a conceptualization of educational quality described by Jap Shirens in 2004. This figure displays how inputs, context, and process generate outputs in a simplistic form. Outputs in this model would help to define quality or lack thereof. Our work presents various data sets viewed over time, identifying trends, comparisons to benchmarks and neighbors, and disaggregated. This presentation is a snapshot of what will be presented in detail in the paper. And I hope you have an opportunity, it will be posted soon, as Jake said, to get yourself involved in this more than 200-page document. Next, please.
20 minutes screwing around.
Well, because you just weren't patient.
Our work follows the lead of Phi Delta Kappa, the professional magazine of educational research, which proposed a model that extends beyond standard measures of resources in academic learning into areas such as school culture, character, well-being, and the teaching environment. While it does not always possible to collect data on all these indicators, we nevertheless cast a wide net. Next, please. So this list that you see here is a small sampling of the input indicators you will find in the paper. We collected data that enable us to identify trends in inputs such as spending, staffing, early childhood opportunities, curriculum, and courses. We also looked at processes and practices that you might remember from that input-output diagram that represent the context in each district. Next, please. We also collected data on output indicators, data that enabled us to identify trends in external ratings, accountability ratings, testing performances, and post-graduation and career outcomes. Next, please.
Can I just interrupt you for one moment?
Yep.
I meant to do this at the outset. We have been Zoom bombed before, and I hope we are not Zoom bombed today. But if that does happen, so people understand what our protocol is, Mary will suspend the meeting. So we'll all see suspend on our screens. She will then eject the Zoom bomber, and then we will resume the meeting. So if that happens, stay tuned, stay on the meeting, wait a few minutes. If we aren't able to eject the Zoom bombers within 5 minutes or so, we will shut down the meeting. But we should be able to eject and resume the meeting, so stay tuned. Sorry for that interruption.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. We begin this section of the paper with some important assertions. Next slide, please. First, every school is exceptional. Every school has challenges, and every school has room to grow. Jake and I have been superintendents of districts that have been thoroughly scrutinized by the Department of Education. We have known the feeling of public presentations of data that may be considered unflattering. Ours is not to criticize, but rather to offer a clear-eyed analysis of the indicators that we've looked at. There is much to celebrate in both districts, and there's much to consider. Next, please. A second thing we have to begin with is how much the two districts have in common. Sometimes people will think, oh my goodness, we're unique. We're very unique districts. But the truth is that there are a great deal of commonalities between these two districts. Commonalities that suggest or create opportunities and suggest a fertile ground for any of the three scenarios under consideration. If you'd move, next slide, please. So, for example, the two districts have very similar trends in expenditures and staffing. You can see here the per pupil expenditures, teacher salaries, licensed teachers, retention, evaluation data. All of these things are quite similar between the two districts. Next, please. An analysis of the improvement plan shows similar goals. They both start with a focus on students for the development of vision for success and for establishing practices and procedures that will lead to increased student success in both plans. Furthermore, both districts recognize the need for community involvement and support for the realization of goals. While both districts are focused on improvement, they've approached it in different fashions. Berkshire Hills has contracted with nationally recognized providers, which could be scaled up in any of the three models. Again, the real key here is that there are the similarities. Similarities create opportunities in any of the models that we're considering. Next, please. The data also show that there are, again, this is the continuation of the we have much in common. While not identical, they're close and they show some of the same values, particularly in arts taking classes. They show similar things in terms of basically all of these indicators, which will be explained in depth in the paper. If you could do the next slide, please.
So just, I just want to stop real quick so folks understand the vocabulary. Just real quickly, ISS is in-school suspension, OSS is out-of-school suspension. And again, we are using some summary terms right now, but we will spell those out so that you understand what they mean in a descriptive way in the paper.
Thank you, Jake. I get lost in my own jargon.
Okay.
Then more in common, you can see that the graduation requirements are very similar. The graduation rates, the dropout rates, and the grade 9 passing rates. Grade 9 passing rate is how many kids pass grade 9, which is a very strong indicator of future success in high school. Please go on. Also, both have been organizing along lines of pathways. Mount Everett has been looking at pathways, offering the ones that are listed there. Monument has also been looking at career pathways. Now, they've established pathways and organized series of experience leading to post-secondary and career success. Though the pathways are not perfectly aligned, they are both using pathways as an organizing principle for the high schools. Next, please. Not only are there many practices and input indicators that are quite similar, also the external ratings actually are quite similar. Now, for those of you who don't know it, grade schools, US News, and Niche are external rating services. The methodology and results of external ratings, such as these services, can be questioned. It can be debated and dismissed as a beauty contest, but they serve as an important point of reference for prospective families who are looking to move into Berkshire County. They also provide data points that can be compared with other data sources. Now, that's the first image, is we're looking at high school ratings. As you can see, there are great similarities in the way the districts or the high schools are being perceived by these outside rating organizations. The next table that will come up on this slide is actually looking at them in comparison with the other schools, other high schools in Berkshire County. And you can see that Monument and Mount Everett are in this, basically the top 2 quartiles in terms of how they're viewed by these outside rating organizations. The next portion that's going to come are the elementary schools. There are some differences here, but I think that the important part is that we are perceived in similar fashions in ways that would enable collaboration or any of the 3 models to be effectively implemented. The next slide, please. Okay, the next series of slides are going to point to indicators that show areas that have room to grow. Next slide, please. So, the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Accountability System rates districts based on a broad range of criteria that are fully explained in the paper. But both districts, while judged to be progressing, have areas that the department has identified. I've actually presented all of the districts in Berkshire County for comparison's sake, but it also shows that there's progress being made toward the goals, but there are things to be that could be improved by careful consideration. We have the next slide is the DPI Accountability System assigns percentile rankings to schools, which puts each school in a percentile ranking with similarly configured schools. So to provide context, Berkshire County rankings in 2019 ran from a second percentile to the 92nd percentile. And as you can see, the accountability percentile for most of the 8 two districts are presented here in the final column. The median across the county was a median of 33. So the DESI accountability system provides data with the intention that schools will use those data to improve. Now we have to keep these data in perspective. This is a snapshot of just 2019. It's important also to look at variations within the district. The paper will give far more information about the Berkshire County context and go into depth about it. But these are areas in which we're sure that there's room, there's improvement that could be made. Next slide, please. Now, this slide, basically the accountability system is based on many data points, of which MCAS is one. The department's target is for all students to score at or above proficient. The paper presents a great deal of MCAS data that goes by grade level, but the small size of grade level cohorts across most schools in Berkshire County reduces the confidence level when looking at MCAS performances across districts at a single grade level. Combining all of the MCAS performances in grades 3 through 8 provides a larger and therefore more reliable sample. So as you can see here, what we've got in the grade 8, this is saying that 51% of students in grades 3 through 8 in Berkshire Hills meet or exceed proficiency. 46 in Southern Berkshire, that's in ELA. And as you can see, that was 2019 and 2021, those data are also provided. Now for context, the Berkshire County range in these percentages range from 33, actually in English language arts, range from 22 to a high of 68 with a median of 49. The math range is ranges from 11% of students to 68% of students with a median of 39. Both districts will have to work to ensure that more students achieve proficient scores in grades 3 through 8 ELA and math. The relationship of lower math and higher ELA pattern is found throughout the Commonwealth. The 10th grade MCAS, which is also outlined here, is a condition for graduation according to Massachusetts law, which might explain the differences in percentages when compared to the 3 through 8 percentages. Next slide, please. So another part of DESI accountability system is closing the achievement gap, which refers to the disparity in academic performances and attainments between different groups of students, such as white students, minority students, students with disabilities, and students from higher and lower income households. Next, please. Let's take a snapshot of 2019. The first table shows the percentage of all students who scored proficient or above on the 2019 third grade ELA reading MCAS. The second table shows the percentage of economically disadvantaged students who scored proficient or above on the 2019 third grade ELA MCAS. Now the graph shows all districts and they're put on this graph and represented by a dot plotted by the percentage of students meeting or exceeding grade 3 reading proficiency standards as compared to the percentage of economically disadvantaged and high need students. Now this goes in, this will be explained more carefully in the paper, but it could be viewed, and the way it should be viewed is that districts near the line performed as expected, districts over the line performed better than expected, and districts under the line performed less well than we would expect. The paper goes into detail about performance gaps. It also examines the effect of economic on standardized test performance. The figure shows that Berkshire County districts have varying success in achieving results with students from economically disadvantaged households. Although they're not identified, both Berkshire Hills and Southern Berkshire are below the line. If we could go on to the next slide. Student growth percentiles, that's what we have here. They are they range from 1 to 99 and are calculated by comparing one student's history of MCAS scores to the scores of all other students in the state with similar history of MCAS scores. We refer to this group as academic peers. In simple terms, Students earning high growth percentiles, and that is basically above 50, answers more questions correctly on a test than they had on their previous year. So this slide shows that the districts are quite similar and are performing in that moderate spot in regard, mostly performing in the moderate spot in regard to student growth percentile. Of course, there are some that are like, I think as you can see, Southern Berkshire, English grade 10, sticking to more in the higher percent growth level. And the others are basically, as you can see for yourself, they're similar. Moving on. Back to you, Jake.
I'm going to talk a little bit about resources pretty quickly. Our ninth assertion is that resources impact opportunity. Obviously, the investments that you all make in education are important to assuring that students and faculty have the tools and the resources necessary to support student growth and learning. We're going to just take a look at a few things. We're going to start with some basic information around class size and student-teacher ratios. So this particular table displays student-teacher ratio across 3 years, 2018 to 2020. And this is how many students for each teacher assigned in the school. Southern Berkshire has a smaller student-teacher ratio at 8.7 than Berkshire Hills, but both have much lower ratios than the state average, which is 13.2 to 1. So clearly there's been an investment in maintaining smaller class size and having teachers and adults in the building. We also can examine this a slightly different way by counting the number of adults who are assigned to classrooms and supports for every 100 students. And again, these follow the same patterns in that there's more adults in Southern Berkshire per 100 students than there are in Berkshire Hills, but both districts have slightly higher numbers of adults per 100 students than their Berkshire peers. In this particular case, we compared it to Berkshire, just so you would all have kind of a different way of looking at it. We also did some really deep class size analysis at the 3 grade levels, which I'm just going to talk about pretty briefly. And this, I understand this is a lot to take in, but I'm just going to make a few points that hopefully will underscore why we did this work. Both high schools, as Rob pointed out early, have similar core classes. There's a slight variation between the two schools, high schools, in terms of the electives that they offer and the core content areas. Generally, there's smaller high school classes at Mount Everett than Monument Mountain. Monument has more classes over 20 students versus Mount Everett, which has very few. Both high schools offer class periods in which there are 2 sections or levels of students in the room at the same time. That is a strategy that I've seen even in Pittsfield when you need to take sort of 2 languages, 2 levels of a foreign language and make sure you can deliver it to smaller groups of students. Both schools offer languages in Spanish and French. And both schools do offer AP, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, advanced placement, with more advanced placement courses at Monument than at Mount Everett. Class size at the middle school, pretty straightforward. Get it by grade level. Again, both schools have similar core classes, math, science, English, social studies. Grade 6 at Du Bois is the only grade span that really has class sizes over 20. And all other sections or areas, grade levels and courses are between the 2 middle schools are under 20. Both schools offer Spanish and French, with grade 6 at Mount Everett, grade 7 at Du Bois. Class size at the elementary schools. Elementary schools. Again, there's 4 elementary schools: Undermountain, New Marlboro, South Egremont, and Muddy Brook. They all have different grade levels in terms of how they're organized, but we just did some averages here. And across the schools, the overall aggregate class size for all 4 elementary schools is 14.5, with there being slightly smaller class sizes at Muddy Brook than there are in the Southern Berkshire elementary schools, with the exception of South Egremont, which is really just a 1-grade school. So why are we looking so closely at class size? Because class size is really does present an opportunity for balancing, but also creates an opportunity to look at courses and experiences that students have, and potentially thinking about ways in which we expand those experiences to students who might not have access because they're offered in one school but not in the other. We did put a link. There's a lot of links embedded in the presentation. The Department of Education did do a research brief on class size, which will also be referenced in the paper. But this is a live link. When we post this presentation, you'll be able to sort of look at class size. Class sizes generally across the district are very competitive. So next assertion is that just really impressed, and I want to say this very genuinely, that both school districts, Berkshire Hills and Southern Berkshire, are working incredibly hard to offer an amazingly broad range of programs. I have to be honest with you, I was really somewhat surprised at how much you're all doing, despite the fact that you have limitations of both enrollment and resources. But I can't really commend the staff enough for how hard they're working to ensure that students have the services, supports, and really a set of experiences that you would think wouldn't necessarily be available in smaller schools. This gives you just a quick snapshot of that. This is the high school. This is a list of electives. It's a top graph with the 2 high schools. Monument is on the left, and Mount Everett is on the right. I'm sorry, I have to preface this. This is not all the electives. The top is the electives in art, and the bottom are the electives in what we'd say are career courses, which include both Chapter 70 vocational courses and non-Chapter 74, which we'll get into a little bit later. But there's really 110 electives offered between the 2 schools. It's pretty impressive. At the middle school, again, a good set of reasonable arts electives. Orchestra at Du Bois, both have sort of an engineering makerspace course, although it doesn't appear that there's a lot of pre-vocational, pre-career courses offered at the middle schools. And there may certainly be evidence of that we didn't just get access to, but this is what we have in terms of electives at the middle grades. The out of school time offerings are really quite impressive given the size of the schools. Both high schools and middle schools offer a range of athletics and clubs and arts. There's summer programming that includes credit recovery and transition programs. There's a limited amount of late buses, but there certainly are some late buses offered. But again, this is really a place that seems to me ripe to build from and certainly work together on. Out of school time is incredibly important, as I point out in the upper right-hand component, because it really serves as a great resource to support students in a majority of their time. Then lastly, we just closing out class side, we did look at teacher load. Teacher load in effect is how many students a teacher carries. And again, there's a lot of variation in this based on how a school is organized, what the role of the teacher is. So we looked at sort of just some of the core common classes, and there's a lot of variation, as I said, but at Monument, there are some teachers who carry more than 100 students, and at Mount Everett, there's really only one teacher who carries more than 100 students, again, based on the analysis that we did. It's not unusual for high school teachers to carry 125 kids, which is, they would be teaching 5 periods, 25 students a class period, which is 125. So these are pretty competitive loads. I do think teacher load is a really important variable because teacher load ultimately really impacts how much time a teacher can invest in preparation and providing feedback to the student. And so it is an important number. And I think the fact that loads are small or smaller is a good thing. We looked at overall staffing, sort of snapshots across 3 time periods, looking at admin positions, mid-management position, teachers, support specialists to sort of see trends and patterns. And this is stuff that we'll also be analyzing both here and on the fiscal analysis. And I did put a link down here. We wrote a short little brief on special education in the 2 districts with the help of the 2 directors. Very thankful to the 2 of them for helping us to put that together. And that is actually already on the website if you want to check that out. So Rob, back to you.
Thank you, Jake. The following slides will report on preparation for college and career outcomes. Next, please. There we go. Yep. The goal of education, Department of Education website here in Massachusetts is to prepare our graduates for success in college and career. We're going to start with a look at the last years of high school and the activities that are implemented to prepare students for success in college, and then start taking a look at what happens after high school. Next slide, please. Well, the SAT is administered by the College Board, and colleges have traditionally used it as a gatekeeper for admission to college, although this is being reconsidered at the moment. What we can say is that it can serve as a proxy for evidence that students have been prepared for college work. SATs can be compared across time, against state averages, and against national averages. They can also be measured in relationship to college benchmark, which is 480 in reading and writing, right? 480 in reading and writing, and 530 in mathematics. So as you look at this, we can see that the snapshot demonstrates, although this table presents information from 2019 to 2021, the snapshots demonstrates that both Monument and Mount Everett students taking SAT outperformed the college benchmark threshold and had historically done well against the state average. Monument is testing more students as a percentage of enrollment than Mount Everett. But as I said, they're both exceeding. Next slide, please. The College Board also administers AP courses, which are considered rigorous pre-college academic experiences. The College Board encourages participation, test taking, and scoring 3 or higher. This table shows the 2016 through 2020 enrollment as a percentage of the student body, then the percentage of participating students who took the test, and the percentage of students who scored 3 or higher. AP is an important component for improving college success. And this table provides insights into the patterns of AP in the two schools. A potential source for the difference may be attributed to course access, which is shown on the next slide. This slide represents access to AP courses in Berkshire County in 2019. Every school is represented, and Monument and Mount Everett highlighted. As you can see, Monument Mountain was offered 9 courses. Mount Everett offered 3. Within the county, Pittsfield, Mount Greylock, Wacona, and Drury all offered 10 or more courses. This, as we've been pointing out, would be a potential base from which to work to offer more opportunities to all the students of South County. Next slide, please. Dual enrollment is another important aspect for preparing students for success in college. Dual enrollment are college courses that students can take while they're still in high school. Berkshire Hills, actually, Monument Mountain kids can take Berkshire Community courses, Berkshire Community College courses right at the school. That means at Monument. Southern Berkshire students can also take Berkshire Community College, but they have to go to BCC to do so. But they also have an early college agreement with Simon's Rock that allows students to take up to 2 courses per semester at Simon's Rock. So the dual enrollment possibilities are certainly evident in both of the high schools. Next slide, please. So the Department of Education collects and posts data on post-graduation plans of high school seniors. We've reduced them to 3 containers in this particular presentation. You can see the percentage of students who are interested, or basically who said that they wanted to go to a 2 or 4-year college, those groups that wanted to go to work, and those groups that wanted to do other. And in this particular case, the other, it includes the military and some other things. These data record aspirations, which are not always realized. The percentage of students actually enrolling in college is lower than what students had reported planning to do. We're going to show the actual data on this next slide. So for this analysis, we looked at the graduates between 2006 and 2016. 10 years worth of graduates. During that time, 1,508 kids graduated from Monument, 573 kids graduated from Mount Everett. So when we looked at these groups, we wanted to see who is enrolling in college. So this next line shows how many the kids who were enrolled in college in 2006 through 2016. Now, I had choices where we could look at if the students enrolled the September after their graduation, or extended it to 16 months after graduation. I chose the 16 months because it captured more students. But as you can see,
I have a question. Who?
let me go on here. I believe the questions will be handled at the end here.
Yeah,
Oh.
we're going to hold questions until the public comment period.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. So as you can see, 75% of the students, of the graduating students from Monument attended, or basically enrolled in college, and 66% of the Mount Everett kids. So just to recap, as we are looking at here, what we're breaking down is the kids of all the graduates between 2006 and 2016. How many went, basically, how many enrolled in college? How many of those who enrolled earned a degree? Now, this next line is basically a compilation of all the students who earned a degree from the starting cohort, graduating cohort. So as you can see here, 802 kids, or 53% of the initial 1,508 obtained a degree, and 227, or 40% of the initial 573 who graduated during those years earned a degree. This information is very interesting in regard to, basically very interested in regard to the percentage of kids who are not obtaining a degree after leaving high school. The paper is going to include, on this next slide, paper is going to include all of the colleges that students attended. Basically, I was able to track all of this information. And there was only one college that both schools basically had a fair number of kids attending, and that's Berkshire Community College. So as you can see here, aside from the Berkshire Community College, kids went to a broad range of different schools. And we should probably start off by giving props to Berkshire Community College for educating so many local students and for them being sent. But this also provides an opportunity and perhaps testament to the dual enrollment that has been happening in both of the high schools. The next slide. There are many factors why students don't complete a degree. The important point is that a high percentage of students, of graduates, are not obtaining a degree. The question then becomes, how well prepared are those graduates who enter the workforce? Next slide, please. Now, the following data, there are great limitations to it. I got these all out of Edwin Analytics report, and there are, as I said, limitations. The number employed refers to the total number of students found in wage records and not found in post-secondary enrollment records. The Massachusetts Department of Unemployment Assistance, where this data comes from, does not include employment outside of Massachusetts, federal employees or self-employment, and it does not collect information regarding hours worked. That being said, this list shows the employment choices of 44% of the students who graduated between 2008 and 2016. I apologize for the varying ranges of data, but it all depends on what was available from Edwin. And by the way, I should have qualified that Edwin is a Department of Education's data warehouse that provides data on all aspects of education in Massachusetts. So it shows that a number of our students are entering, of the graduates are entering fields that do not offer opportunity for high wages. Now, this table is a snapshot of the average earning of graduates 4 years after they graduated from high school. The choice of this data was to try to isolate students who opted not to attend college. The slide includes data regarding the earning levels necessary for living in Berkshire County. As you can see, $28,000 to $50,000 is the basic living wage. These data, these wage data, are also very interesting in light of the conversations that have been happening about the situation of affordable housing in South County. The wages are certainly, we're talking about wages of people who would be in the say 21 to 23 age range for each of these things. And they would have a difficult time renting a house. The college and career slides raise important questions in regard to preparing South County students for success after high school. I'll turn it back to you, Jake.
Thanks, Rob. So we're going to wrap up. We're getting very close to the end of the education indicators. I know it's been a lot. We do have additional data that we collected from a variety of sources. That is perception data on both the experience of students and the experience of teachers. Comes from a couple sources. One is a survey we conducted through the planning board. And it's really important that students really report a high level of connection to adults and to their schools. It's really one of the top things. But we also heard pretty consistently that there's a real interest in ensuring that there's adequate resources, a high level of extensive course offerings for students. And we heard very consistently that vocational tech ed, which we're going to talk about in the second half of our meeting today, is deemed of high importance. I'm going to kind of move beyond this, just to kind of skip ahead. We had perception data also from the prevention needs assessment, which we included, which again collects information from grade 8, 10, and 12 students, which is summarized in their report, just about how they experience school, how they enjoy school, whether they think they're have a connection in school. And so again, important information that we'll sort of highlight in the report. And then additionally, the state runs a couple of climate surveys that we'll include too. So all these things sort of build into the feeling of how students and faculty are experiencing schooling in both Berkshire Hills and Southern Berkshire. And really the final data set, and there's so much data we could continue to go into, is just some early childhood data. Both schools have done exceptionally well in really building full day kindergarten programs and getting high levels of participation. There's an emerging investment in pre-K. What we ended up doing is I just did a quick sort of back of napkin calculation of what percentage of students are involved in pre-K programs in the two districts. And about a third of the students in Berkshire Hills are involved in school-run pre-K programs in Berkshire Hills, and about 3/4, which is pretty impressive, in Southern Berkshire. So again, that's an area where we all know that having birth to age 5 programs and pathways, high quality, rigorous, high dosage programs are critical to preparing kids for kindergarten and reading. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of other information we've collected, probably more than people will ultimately have time to read, and we'll get to the sort of the punchline in a minute, but we want to make sure that you just understand we covered a lot of other areas too, including professional development and curriculum, which is not really part of the presentation today. So what's it all mean? What are our points of emphasis? We made sort of 7 points that we'll close with. I'll just read them to you. First of all, we do believe that the school districts have a lot in common. We believe that really could facilitate a degree of collaboration and or consolidation across the districts. 2, we believe that both districts have incredibly unique strengths that could be used to expand opportunities and advance outcomes and improve each other, okay? 3, we know there's room for growth and for improvement and for access. 4, we do believe that districts are doing a lot with existing resources, but could benefit from sharing, combining resources. 5, we believe that by sharing, combining resources and approaches, that it would ensure access by all students to all programs, courses, services, and supports, rather than those things that are available in their districts currently. We do believe that class size balancing could yield some reinvestments, leading to additional new programs and experience and services for students. We'll be talking about that in our recommendations. Then finally, the last point is that post-graduation outcomes do indicate a need for career pathways and additional career vocational technical ed in South County. I did put a set of opportunities that I'll certainly be building on as we get into the recommendations, places where we think there are some really interesting points of potential growth that could be realized through any one of the 3 models, as Rob points out, everything from safety nets to a teaching and learning system to curriculum alignment, making sure that that list of electives I had for the two groups, one in Mount Everett, one at Monument, is not just available for one set of students, but available for both. More high rigorous AP and dual enrollment courses, expanded early childhood, integration of community resources, and I'll kind of leave it there. We will be again describing a lot of these opportunities in a bit more detail in the final report. So I'm going to cut it off there because I'm really watching the clock and wanting to make sure that we have time for Ken to present information on CVTE, which is an important part of our message tonight.
Okay, thank you, Jake. I'm gonna have everyone take a 2-minute break to stretch their legs. It's 6:37. We will resume at 6:39. Stay connected to the Zoom. We're gonna give Jake and team a moment to take a break and everyone else to stretch their legs. Thanks a lot. Stand by.
So Mary, if you could give Ken access as a co-host so he can bring up his presentation. Ken, you ready to go?
You should have it now, Ken.
Yeah, great.
I am ready.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So you can bring up your presentation now, Ken, whenever you're ready, and then everyone just takes a deep breath. We're a bio break. When we get back, we can get right to it. All right, Ken, that's good. So we can see the screen now. I'm assuming you can see your notes.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right, great. I'm going to go on mute then. And when Lucy calls for action, you are good to go.
All right. Sounds good, my friend.
Okay, Ken, you're on.
Okay, well. Let me just, all right, ready to go. Glad to see everybody tonight. It's, I think, terrific turnout. I appreciate all of you being here. I know this has been long, and this part of the presentation is probably going to go about another 45 minutes. So be patient. I think we've got some information that'll be interesting to you. I want to say briefly that putting this together was very much a team effort. Frank Cody, in particular, a member of our team, contributed an awful lot to this. I'll be doing almost all of the slides, but he really contributed a great deal. Also, that I'm going to be handling some transitions to YouTube videos. So if I have any technical problem with them, please just stay with me. I'll figure it out on the fly. So we're going to launch right in and start talking about CVTE, Career, Vocational, and Technical Education for Berkshire County students. As you can see from the data that Rob and Jake presented, we did a lot of research, a lot of information. The thing that really jumped out to me at a certain point was access to CVTE for Southern Berkshire County students. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. That's my own, most of my teaching and administrative background. And I sort of, as you'll see, think a great deal of the benefits of CVTE for students. So going through this presentation, I'll first talk about CVT programs in Massachusetts in general, and then compare that to what you have in Southern Berkshire County. I'm going to share what we're calling a vision with you, and we've named it South County Tech. I don't mean to name a school that you haven't designed or built yet, but it's just a kind of verbal shorthand for talking about it. We'll go through sort of the principles that we followed in thinking about this, and then going through a number of different aspects of that: organizational models, governance, financing, and so on, and concluding with our recommendations to all of you. So we'll start with that the vast majority of students throughout the Commonwealth have access to a broad range of high-quality CVTE programs. This is an old map that several years ago that Department of Education put out. The areas that are colored, those are the regional vocational technical schools. Up in northern Berkshire County, you have McCann. Northern Franklin County, that's Franklin County Technical School. But all of the areas that have a dot in them, those are municipal systems that have municipal CVTE schools. And you can see that the state is pretty well covered. If you look at Berkshire County, particularly southern Berkshire County, you'll see that that's not as well covered, and we'll go into some detail on that. I want to emphasize that when we're talking about Chapter 74 programs, they're distinct from school to work programs, innovation pathways programs, shop classes, although all of those things are good. And we know that both Mount Everett and Monument Mountain and the middle schools are doing significant things for students through those programs. But what we're talking about here is schools that combine a broad range of these programs so that students have choices. They're carefully regulated by the state. Exploratory is normally in 9th grade, and students rotate through that. The time on learning for students is between 1,000 and 1,700 hours over 4 years. The instructors are Chapter 74 licensed. I'm one, Frank Cody is one in our background. Co-op is often an integrated experience. The learning accomplishments are competency-based, certificate-based, aligned with industry standards, and careful articulation institution to institution to post-secondary technical training and colleges with a technical component. Because you don't have a standalone Voc Tech school in southern Berkshire County, we're going to take a tour of a couple of schools in the area, look at a new facility in the eastern part of the state. And I know some of you may have been in schools like these and be very familiar with them. So I ask for your patience through that. I think there are some members of the group watching tonight who just haven't seen schools like this because you don't have one in your area. And we're going to start with the most recent completed building project of a CVTE school in Massachusetts, which is Minuteman Tech in Lexington. This is my first technical, whoop, hold on a second. I was afraid of this. I know you can't see this yet. So I know you can see that now. I'm just going to back it up a bit. This was recently completed. I know you won't be able to build a facility this size. This is suburban Boston, but you can get an idea of what a new CVTE facility looks like. And also, I think as you look at some of the sort of cutting edge programs, you'll see that this is not what we might think of as our grandfathers or grandmothers CVTE. You've got technology, robotics, engineering. And please keep in mind, all of these programs are 4-year programs. So students generally choose in their 9th grade year, then they have 3 years after that, either on a week about or a what's called a half-day schedule. In the case of Minuteman in Lexington, this was a complete rebuild of an existing facility. And when I look at this, here's culinary. What I always think about is what these shops look like when they're full of students. So if you were able to take a tour of a school like this with the students in the program, you'd see 16, maybe as many as 30 students, usually mixed grade levels, 9 and 11 and 10 and 12, learning how to do all of the things that people in these occupations do. Here's early education. You can see that's a beautiful facility. Early education is the only program in Massachusetts at the high school level that begins to train high school students to be teachers. Horticulture and landscaping, environmental science. Biotechnology. It's really quite amazing, sort of the cutting edge programs that have been developed in the last 10 or 15 years. Lots of computer applications, graphics, computer networking. As you'll see, many of these programs have a very strong computer-based component, whether or not that's the, so I taught carpentry. I would have died to teach in this lab. Up-to-date equipment, room to practice framing, as well as cabinetry and so we're not suggesting you could have this facility. This is built for a much bigger group of students. But we want to give you this idea of what a school that's dedicated to CVTE for students looks like. And when I take tours, I've been in almost all of these schools in Western Mass. It's just amazing going from program to program to see all of these technical areas that students are being trained in. Automotive technology, you might think this looks like your dealership when you go in to have your car serviced, and in fact, that's what it's supposed to be like. This is a system pulled out for diagnosis. And animal science comes to Minuteman. So hopefully I can, yes, that worked. Okay, so that's Minuteman Tech, the most recently completed project. And next we're going to go to Taconic and Pittsfield, and we're going to see two parts of this video. And this is
Hello,
Marcy
middle school students and
Simons.
families. It's our pleasure to introduce you to the Career and Technical Program at Taconic High School. You may not be familiar with the term CTE, but you may have heard the term vocational or shop class. CTE is a program that offers technical training in a particular occupation while you're in high school. CTE students complete the same requirements to graduate from high school as all students, but they also receive skills and training in a specific occupation. We'd like to take a few minutes to give you an overview of the exciting programs offered here at Taconic, talk about some of the benefits of choosing a CTE program, dispel a few myths you may have heard about CTE, and lastly, talk about how and when you can apply for CTE.
And we're going to send you this PowerPoint afterwards. And all of the links in the PowerPoint are live. I really encourage you to see all these videos at full length. And I just have to say, I know they're promotional, but this is really what you see when you go in these schools. So this is myths about.
Into CTE has the opportunity to explore all of our programs. Whichever program you choose, you'll have the opportunity to leave high school with the latest technical training, as well as the opportunity to obtain multiple industry recognized certifications and credentials. Our CTE numbers are growing quickly. CTE now makes up about half of Taconic, and our numbers are growing all the time. Let's take a few minutes to look at some myths you may have heard about CTE.
You may have heard that CTE is for students who are only good with their hands. CTE training requires both your brain and your hands to work together and solve problems and apply skills in real life situations. And CTE students are passionate about what they're learning, so a lot of heart goes into their education as well. Someone may have told you, don't choose CTE if you want to go to college. Many of our students continue their education after finishing CTE, whether it's a 2-year or a 4-year college training, certification programs, and union apprenticeships. CTE students leave our program ready to be lifelong learners.
You may think CTE programs aren't as rigorous as other high school programs. Taconic CTE students take all the same academic classes as non-CTE students, including the opportunity to take advanced level AP courses. In addition to that, students are also receiving industry-specific skills in an occupation. Does that sound less rigorous to you? Lastly, someone may have told you CTE programs are just for girls or just for boys. Taconic CTE's main goal is for every student to find a career path they're excited to learn, no matter what people typically look like in that profession.
Parents, guardians, and families, are you thinking about how you're going to pay for your child's education after high school? CTE programs have many advantages to help your student avoid huge amounts of debt. First of all, CTE students leave with skills they can put to use right away in a job specific to their training, oftentimes at higher salaries than their non-CTE counterparts. Depending on the occupation, many employers will pay for further training. Secondly, CTE students may have the opportunity to apply for paid apprenticeship or training programs after completing CTE. Lastly, many of our CTE programs have articulation agreements with area colleges, which means CTE students can earn college credit for their training while at Taconic. So if all of this sounds like something you're interested in, let's talk about how you apply for CTE and what the criteria for admission entails.
So that's Taconic. Just a few miles north of you. Beautiful new facility. And both on our team, Jake Everwine and Frank Cody had significant roles in putting that together. I'm including a slide on Westfield Tech. Again, I'll encourage you to go and look at that, but in the interest of time, we're not going to watch this particular video. But we are going to watch a section of a video from Smith and Northampton. It'll take me just a moment to find it. This is an advanced manufacturing teacher who was a student and came back to teach, and I think speaks very compellingly about, let's see. Oh. One second, sorry. There we go.
Involving healthcare.
Started off as a graduate of Smith Vocational High School back in 2004. Spent a number of years out in the field working in manufacturing, and now came back to the school to kind of give back to the community, give some more students the chance that I had when I came here. So the manufacturing program here at Smith Voc really offers a wide variety of information for students. They can work on projects with computers doing 3D solid modeling, as well as CAM software, which offers the chance to turn the 3D model into an actual part, creating a code to put into one of the machines where they can make parts. They also do a lot of manual milling, some machine grinding. Right away, they're getting hands-on into our software, creating 3D parts. We use 3D printers so that they can quickly make a representation of their model, as well as getting out into the shop, making drawings and creating parts on the machines. In their junior year, as well as senior year and after graduating, can find positions in all different fields, manufacturing, whether it's running machines, doing CNC programming. It's also an excellent jumpstart for an engineering career. In addition to a high school diploma, students will receive a certificate of completion in their shop program, as well as the ability to try for 2 levels of state certification, which can lead to articulation agreements at some of the local community colleges. Articulation agreement gives students credit for college classes while they're here in the manufacturing program. Most of the students here really enjoy the ability to work with their hands. They're not sitting in a classroom writing papers all day long. They're in the shop They're running machines, they're doing programming. There's a lot of high-tech stuff that's in here now. Many of the local shops in the area have been taking on students as co-ops. After they've graduated, they're taking full-time employment, and they've also offered some students in 10th grade positions in the evenings where they can work and start building up a chance to get into the door full-time. The future of manufacturing is incredible right now. We've gotten information from the state that says in the next 5 to 10 years, they're looking to fill 100,000 positions in manufacturing. And all the Voc schools in the area won't be able to fill that demand. So right now we're getting more calls for students to fill jobs than we have students available.
That's Smith, and the story that he just told about we're graduates of advanced manufacturing programs, the demand for them. In my day job working with school districts around Western Mass, we've been hearing that for at least 10 years. It's really true. And finally, for right now, we're going to just hear from a graduate of McCann in advanced manufacturing who went on to engineering. And again, this will take me just a minute so I can find the right place to start. That's
what's required in machining, they would definitely get the position over another person.
I work for a company in Seekonk, Massachusetts called Phoenix Incorporated. I'm a mechanical engineer and project manager for them. We build large-scale machine tools. A lot of my other friends from different high schools and prep high schools around the country brought in all this Calc 1, Calc 2, all this crazy high Calc math, which we didn't have because we had time focused on vocational stuff. So they all classed out or tested out of their Calc 1 and 2 classes, which I didn't. But come second year, we're all taking the general how to use SolidWorks or Pro E or your basic 3D modeling software, and I was able to test out all of that. When I came to Showcase for Success when I was in 8th grade, and I came and saw the school for the first time and walked through all the shops. When I walked into machine tech, I instantly knew I wanted that. Just the smell and the oil and all the machines. That's where I wanted to be. So that I was very fortunate that way to know that right out of the gate. Right freshman year, I was already working as a WPI called us PLAs or peer learning assistants. I was working with seniors on their capstone engineering projects to do their machining for them.
And that's, as you saw, a recent McCann graduate who went on to engineering. We have one more video, but I'm going to show this at the end of the presentation. And this is about post-secondary programs that are offered at Minuteman, the school that we started with. And the purpose of that will be to give you a vision of how you might think about a technical center that also serves adults in your community. So that's what we just saw, the reality for students in most of the Commonwealth. But for Southern Berkshire County, it's actually a different story, and it has historical reasons, it has organizational reasons. Part of it is relatively dispersed population throughout the area, but the reality is you don't have a school like that. Again, back to this map of CVTE programs across the state. Here's a close-up of Berkshire County. The blue at the top is McCann. The dot in the center, Pittsfield, really should be all one color to show that the students there have access to a variety of programs. And you can see in Southern Berkshire County, in terms of Chapter 74 licensed programs, relatively few through Berkshire Hills. And then if we look at actual numbers of students enrolled in programs, this is the most recent data from the DESE website. For Berkshire County, Charles McCann, 506 students, Taconic, 406, and right now just 47 students in Southern Berkshire County enrolled in Chapter 74 programs. I have to tell you also, I've spent a good deal of time at Taconic in the last few years in my day job. My understanding is Taconic was built and meant to be for both students who purely follow academics and students who have Chapter 74 concentrations. The sign up in Pittsfield for Taconic has grown every year since Taconic reopened. And they're looking very seriously in making that just for Chapter 74 CVTE students now. That's how strong the enrollment is. And I'll just say quickly to my team, Jake and everybody else, if I misstate anything, don't be shy about jumping in. So now we want to share a vision with you. And we're calling it, just for now, verbal shorthand, South County Tech. We think that you could develop, create, plan, and design and deliver a school attached to a regional high school that had a number of these programs and served your students in this way. We've curated a list of programs. You're not going to be able to offer 22 like some of the suburban Boston schools can. And this is just a beginning list. If you go ahead with this, if the two districts come together and decide to do this, part of that process would be determining which programs to offer and how many programs you could reasonably offer given the projected number of students. And we clipped in just some photographs. These are from Taconic and other places, but imagine this for your students: advanced manufacturing, automotive technology, building trades, building construction, culinary arts with the kind of lab facility that we saw at Minuteman, health occupations, early childhood and care, horticulture, agricultural, animal science, forestry. They do all of this at Smith. And then information technology, pre-engineering. When you begin to think about the possibilities for your students, it's like trying to figure out of these menu items, which ones are most appealing, because they all have value. And I'm going to take a short break, and I'm going to turn to Jake and ask him how these specific programs, how we generated that list as an initial recommendation.
Sure. Thanks, Ken. So we do have a very meaty CVTE report, which is already posted on the website under resources. You're welcome to go there. There'll be much more description in terms of terminology, definitions, data. But we did come up with a preliminary list of potential possible Chapter 74 vocational programs. We built that off of 5 elements. One was, what were existing programs that currently are in place? There are 2, as many of you know, horticulture and automotive at Berkshire Hills, but both schools also have non-Chapter 74 programs that certainly could be built upon. So that was one. The second was, looked at a lot of economic and workforce data. We actually met with folks for the Regional Employment Board, Mass Workforce Board, One Berkshire, looking at blueprints, forecasts. A lot of that is in the report. I encourage you to take a peek at it. It's a beginning start. We also incorporated the community survey. As you all know, asked people about their preferences or interests in particular programs. Clearly, there'll be implications around space and cost, whether or not you're looking at renovation or new construction. And lastly, where do you have really strong partners in the region, in the sub-region, South County, where you can leverage those partnerships in the form of expertise, equipment, staff, and ultimately what's really important is field placements. Part of vocational education is that students do spend time in the places of employment, getting hands-on experience, applying what they've learned in school and in the shops, in the real world. So all these things were factored in to the 8 programs that we've sketched out as a beginning point. But just to clarify what Ken said, if and when a decision is made to move forward to vocational, it really will require a lot of conversation, really, we think at the advisory board level on sort of which ones make the most sense.
Thank you, Jake. So this is, again, this whole presentation is through a CVTE lens, and we understand there are many other factors to think about. But I can say this with a strong heart. We think that your 8 towns working together should seriously consider designing and building a new CVTE center attached to a regional high school. In in structuring the rest of the next portion of the presentation, we followed three principles. The first is you put students first. So if you want to provide these kinds of opportunities to students, that's the first thing. And governance and fiscal structures come second. So we think you shouldn't start with saying the district should be this size or this many towns, but start by what do students need? What is it they're not getting now? How could we provide that? And then certain governance and fiscal structures are going to make it easier for you to provide that access to students. And lastly, we'll touch on this at the end. If you're going to make this kind of investment in planning and building and providing, CVTE centers can serve adults, industry, and local business as well. Natural question to ask is, could you make it happen? I believe, having looked at this, it's one of the things that the two districts can do together that it would be difficult for them to do separately. And one of the big reasons is just not sufficient numbers of students. If you embark on this, all of my experience in CVTE in the last 25 years is the state legislature will be very supportive of it. The business community will be supportive of it. And you currently have 4 towns that are tuitioning in students at the high school level. You might think about how to involve them, and you have 2 towns that are within driving distance who may want to send students to the technical center as well without necessarily being members of the district. So could you make it happen? I think you could. We're going to go through some specific aspects of this design process: organizational model, governance, finances, programming, access, enrollment, and alignment. We think that you need to choose an organization model that will work, design a governance system that includes as many towns as possible, design a financing system so that everyone pays a fair share and then it's affordable for your towns, provide quality programming. The next is very important: align the high school and technical center schedules, staffing, and more in order to eliminate barriers for students. Ensure that students from all the towns have equal access. And the last one is what Jake was alluding to: projecting likely enrollment is something that has to be approached carefully. And we have to look at the right data because it's going to determine how big a center, how many programs, et cetera, that you build if you do this. This next section is sort of an excerpt of a presentation on organization models we did to the finance subcommittee in the fall. I'll ask for a little bit of patience on this. You'll getting this PowerPoint. It's complicated, but only because your choices are complicated. And this is about if you were to build a CVTE center attached to a regional high school, what kind of organizational structure, particularly at the district level, would support that? In thinking about that, we can look at 4 or 5 kinds of models, organizational models for CVTE schools throughout the Commonwealth. You have regional voc techs like McCann. You have municipal voc techs like Taconic. You have one municipal regional voc tech, which is Smith in Northampton, which is a city school, but serves about 25 communities. You have one collaborative in West Springfield where students attend on a half-day basis from about 7 sending towns. And actually the last model is the one we're going to be recommending, which is a shared high school with a CVTE center. You could think of it as a one campus model. Tantascwa, I haven't been there, but I've read a little bit about it, has a similar model. My first 3 years of administration were up in Bennington at Southwest Vermont Career Development Center. They literally had a bridge between the academic high school and the technical center, but the students had access through just walking down a hallway from the academic classes in the high school to the technical center. We're not recommending that you build a regional voc tech school in addition to your 2 regions. You already are suffering from declining enrollment. You don't need to create a 3rd high school that would compete for students with the 2 existing high schools. You're not a municipality. You're a collection of at least 8 towns. The collaborative model, half day, where students come from a number of sending towns. Your teachers, academic and vocational, are not in the same building. They can't work together, and the schedules are usually not aligned. So we don't recommend that model, but we're going to be recommending the shared high school with a CVTE center or a one campus model. In order to achieve that, you're going to need a regional school district that provides that. And we're going to look at two options to do that. This is the complicated part. One is a shared high school CVTE center within an 8-town regional secondary school district. We think this is one of the questions you posed to us when we embarked on this project. And it would look something like this. You see your 8 towns from the 2 existing school districts. You would have one school committee, one central administration, one shared high school, and then a CVTE hub of 6 to 8 programs attached to that high school. This would be a regional secondary school district similar to regional voc techs, except this would be academic and voc tech combined. However, right now you have 2 existing school districts that go pre-K through 12. And if you look down at the bottom, you've got a high school in each one of them. If those high schools are combining in the new regional school district, the question becomes, what do you do with the remaining schools? How are they organized? You could do 2 things. You could organize a parallel 8-town elementary regional school district. Again, you have your towns feeding into a school committee, an administration, and your middle school and elementary school still separate. And then if you look at the region as a whole, you would have an 8-town regional elementary school district, and you would have an 8-town regional secondary school district with an attached CVTE hub. The second option would be for the 2 districts to combine to establish 2 separate regional elementaries. So Southern Berkshire could reorganize, and the high school could become part of the secondary regional school district. Same thing for Berkshire Hills, and the rest of these schools and the towns operate separate regional elementary districts. And you would end up with, in the area, 3 regional school districts, 2 elementary school districts, and 1 shared high school district with attached CVTE center. The second option is a shared high school and a CVTE center within an 8-town regional pre-K through 12 school district. So this is the second way of setting it up. And some of you who were at the presentation back in the fall to the fiscal subcommittee saw this. This is what we're calling a unified budget. This is 8 towns, 1 school committee, 1 central office, existing elementary and middle schools still separate, but administered together, and then the shared high school with the attached CVTE program. Either one of these options would work, organizationally speaking, and we're not making a recommendation at this point as to which is the best to pursue. We just want to lay out options before you. Again, you'll have all of this, so you'll have a chance to look more closely at it. The big question, I think, at this point where you're trying to determine whether to do this separately or together, we know Berkshire Hills is very far down the road on a complete remodeling of the high school with CVTE programs attached. In fact, I think they're waiting for MSBA response to the latest building proposal. And we know incredible work over more than a decade has gone into that. But we're just going to talk about the advantages to Berkshire Hills doing it alone or the 2 districts doing it together. If the 8 towns do it together as a unified district of either kind that we just saw, you would create easy access to the CVTE programs for all students from the 8 towns. You would share design and operation. You would share costs. If Berkshire Hills does it by themselves, Access for Southern Berkshire students would be through choice or tuition agreements. And Berkshire Hills would be in the position of making unilateral determination of CVT program selection, and the costs would not be shared across the 8 towns. I want to talk for just a moment about the advantages that I think the region has as a whole. If you think of yourself as a region rather than 2 separate school districts, here's an opportunity to give all high school students equal access to this kind of quality Chapter 74 program that we saw. Right now, in areas with declining enrollment, existing high schools end up competing for a declining pool of students. It creates a kind of competition between districts. You'd be moving from that to collaboration because you'd be sharing the high school and the CVTE programs. Want to talk for a minute about specific advantages to the Southern Berkshire towns to joining Berkshire Hills in planning and building this technical center. If you do that, you would ensure that Southern Berkshire students from your 5 towns have equal access. You would ensure that it's large enough and has a broad enough range of programs to meet the needs of all of your interested students. You would be in on the planning stages. You could help influence which CVTE programs are offered. Depending on how it's all negotiated, you would share ownership. You'd have seats on the school committee, help choose the administrative team, and on an annual basis, help set the budget. For Berkshire Hills, we're not in your shoes, but we tried to imagine ourselves from the outside. If you do this with Southern Berkshire, it becomes more affordable. There would be an equitable sharing of operational costs. And in the future, when students from Southern Berkshire come in, you could arrange the regional agreement so that they pay full share rather than a choice student comes in and pays much less than that. Construction costs and the debt associated with that could be shared. And we know there's increased state MSBA reimbursement if you have a new regional school district with more towns. We also think if Berkshire Hills can involve Southern Berkshire in this project, you'll be able to have a broader range of programs in the CVTE Center, which is going to benefit all Berkshire Hills students. As you move forward, if you move forward with this, you have to create a process by which people can determine, towns, when I say people, I mean towns, if they want to be participants in this. If you build it too big, you can overbuild, and then you've not made best use of your dollars. And if you build too small, it's really tricky to hang on to build onto CVTE facilities. If you think about the facilities we saw at Minuteman, imagine the cost of those. You really want to plan carefully and build what you want from the beginning. I'll talk just a minute about financing a technical center, both on the operational side and the revenue side. CVTE programs are more expensive to run. You have smaller class sizes. I taught carpentry. I taught freshmen how to run industrial shop equipment. You can't do that with 32 students. The most I ever had was 16, and it's a stretch with 16. So for many reasons, the class sizes are smaller. Your equipment has to be updated. You have to be training for what industry has now, not what they had a few years ago. Supplies and materials are more expensive, and the labs are just bigger and more expensive to maintain. High ceilings, big areas, they emulate industry. The state recognizes this. In what's called the foundation budget, the state allows $99,715 for a high school student. They allow $14,657 for a Chapter 74 certified enrolled student. And this is FY21. This is, it's gone up since then. You get some increase in federal aid as well. I apologize for the small font size on this. This was a screenshot I took. It's not huge money, But when you talk about improving programs year after year, this is federal Carl Perkins money from the feds through the state to Chapter 74 programs. And it's offered to both secondary and post-secondary programs. Because the state understands that the costs are higher, CVT non-member tuition rates are set much higher. And this is a range, this is FY22. And you can see the rates that these Voc Tech schools are allowed to charge the sending school districts are in the, with the exception of Tantascwa, the $16,000 to $18,000 range, because these are the actual costs. When we were researching this and looking at Minuteman, I came across a really interesting note on the Chapter 70 formula. It turns out that Minuteman is allowed to assess an additional charge to their sending districts, and they've divided their sending towns into two, type A and type B. I'm not sure what that is. It's probably member and non-member, and they can assess directly debt service capital costs in addition to the tuition rates you just saw. So 7,400, 5,600, and that's in addition to the 1,800 or so. Again, you know, if you build a CVT facility, right sizing it is going to be crucial. We'll talk briefly about building a regional technical center. This is the 8 programs we just looked at, and these are the minimum square footages that the state lists that you have to run a certified Chapter 74 program. This size of facility exceeds what either high school has now. So this is my opinion looking from the outside, but if you want this range of programs for all of you students, you're going to need a new building. One of the interesting things about MSBA reimbursement for Voc Tech schools is equipment gets included in your reimbursement rate. So Peter, I'm not sure what MSB calculated for Berkshire Hills. It's 60%, maybe somewhere in that range. But if you're building CVT shops, you get to purchase the equipment under the same reimbursement rate as the building itself. When I started at Franklin County Tech School in 1986, they had, it was about 10 years old, they had completely equipped that carpentry shop with probably 75% state money at that time. We're getting close to the end. You've all been very patient. I appreciate your close attention. I'm just going to touch on a few aspects of programming and alignment. This is again a listing of the strengths of Chapter 74 programs. Again, a difference of degree, 1,000 to 1,700 hours over 4 years creates a difference in kind. My experience is you need 2 licensed instructors per program, one with 9th and 11th graders, one with 10th and 12th. If you can have special education paraprofessionals, not just in the academic classes, but in the labs as well. We think of Voc Tech as hands-on learning, but it's cognitive. Every single aspect of it is. And the kinds of learning problems that kids have in academics, they also have in shops. The personal strong opinion of mine, every shop program needs a textbook-based related theory course, and shop and academic teachers need to be able to plan together. So if you build this technical center attached to the high school, your math teachers can plan with your carpentry teachers, and the students benefit from this. So it's not 2 separate schools, but it's integrated academics and technical for the students. One of the big decisions will be scheduling. Do you do half day, or week about? There's 2 key ways of doing it. And there are modifications of all of this. Half day, kids get CVTE every day. Week about facilitates internships, co-op. And if you're going to build a house or run a restaurant, in some ways it's easier, but there's no one definite way to do this. Different schools have taken different approaches. just for a moment about, I think Massachusetts has one of the premier CVTE systems in the country. It's broadly recognized as that. There is one, what I consider to be a design limitation with it, which is we ask 8th grade students at the end of their 8th grade year or halfway through 8th grade to decide what path they're going to follow. Are they going to go to an academic high school? Or are they going to go to a regional voc tech? Not everybody in 8th grade knows that. I taught 9th and 10th grade students, and I saw the change in them in the 10th grade year, that the reality of they're going to have to either go to college or go out to work grew on them. So that aspiration to pursue technical training comes later for some students. If the system forces kids to go to geographically different schools for technical ed or academics, it's not easy for a student to come back. But if you build a one campus model, students can go back and forth between the two. Traditional academic students would have access in some forms to the technical programs. Technical students have access to a wide variety of AP programs and so on. All students could engage in career exploration, and the schools would not be competing for students. They'd be collaborating to provide everything that their students wanted and needed. I think of this as career ladders. I had carpentry students who went on to become civil engineers and so on. If we look at health assisting students, CNA, they can become CNAs, LPNs, RNs, PAs, physicians, etc. When I first went up to Bennington, we had a pre-law program, protective services, and we had students sitting in that program together, some of whom were going to be EMTs, police, paralegals, and some of whom were going to go on to law school. And we aligned that technical program with AP, social studies, and English for those students. If you want to create access for students, you have to eliminate barriers. And the first I'm going to mention, this is absolutely key, is geographic barriers. If you're going to do this and have a shared high school with an attached technical center, it has to be in a place that everybody can get to. You don't want to have it separate from the high school, because then it forces students to choose one or the other. Excuse me. Fiscal barriers, if you're a non-member town, you don't have the same access as a student from a member town. And we always have to be aware of the process of enrollment, that if students don't have access to the information, it becomes more difficult to enroll. So we suggest that this technical center, if you do it, exist within as large a regional district as possible, as many towns as you can, offer a wide range of programs, be attached to and aligned with the regional high school, and be located in a geographically central place.
Hey, Ken, I'm going to do a quick time check. We're at 7:30.
Yep, I've got 2 more minutes.
Okay, thank you.
This can best be achieved if the 8 towns form one larger high school district. Existing tuitioning towns are invited to join, and students from adjacent sending towns have a clear and easy process to attend. This last section I'll skip over. It's about how we would right size the technical center. I'll just note that McCann enrolls 31% of the 9 through 12 population up in North County. And I'll close with our recommendation to design and build a new regional comprehensive high school with an attached CVTE center with 6 to 8 Chapter 74 programs. And we're going to close with hearing from a few more students.
Hey, Ken, I'm going to probably cut that off just because I would encourage people to go to the video, but I know I want to hand it back to Lucy because I think she wanted to have about 30 minutes for public comment.
Okay.
Don't mean to cut you off, but I appreciate everything you've offered today. A lot of content.
I would recommend everybody go to this last video. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ken. I'm sure that last video was very inspiring, and I
Yeah, if you want to show it, it's fine. I mean, I don't
no, it's okay. It's okay, Jake. We're all gonna click on it as soon as this meeting is over, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very good.
But I did promise that we would have a public comment period tonight. And so I do want to give those folks who have been patiently waiting for that an opportunity to give us their reactions to what we've heard tonight, ask questions that the research team can take back and respond to, and just general comments. I do want to limit those public comments to 2 minutes so that we can get through the comments everyone has. And then, you know, one person each, and then if there's time at the end, we can open it up for some repeat reactions, comments, questions. I do encourage everyone to email Jake with any questions or comments that you don't get an opportunity to make tonight or that occur to you later and you'd like to weigh in on. So with that, I'm going to see if I can find the hands up.
I see one, Sharon Gregory.
Okay, I see Sharon. Yeah, go ahead, Sharon. Sharon, are you there? Are you seeing any other hands up, Jake? I actually am not.
No, I just see Sharon Gregory, that's all.
Okay. Well,
We have two
there's
participants.
Amy. Amy, you've got your hand up. Why don't you go?
Is Amy able to mute? Are people able to mute?
You
Unmute?
mean unmute?
Yes.
Mary, you need to unmute Amy. And if everyone could just identify themselves and what town they live in, that'd be great. I think maybe we're having a problem getting people unmuted. Mary, you still with us? Can you weigh in?
I am here and I'm just trying. Okay, Amy, I think you should be okay now.
Yeah, I think that worked. So first of all, I want to just say thank you so much. This is really an incredible effort, and I really appreciate the thought and preparation and research that has gone into this whole effort. I guess what I find difficult at this stage, and I appreciate, you know, the kind of public service announcement or commercial that we just watched, and I really do not mean to say that in any kind of undermining way. Like, how can we actually affect change and listen to the voices of people in our community in a way that feels relevant and authentic? And I really, really want to be clear that I'm not saying that in any way to undermine the work that the Regional Planning Board has done and all of the focus groups and all of this effort. It's really remarkable and amazing. And I had the great fortune of participating in a focus group, and I think I find myself straddling between the concept of like, what can we actually do now? How can we engage our community and actually make change now, as opposed to looking at kind of an 8-year plan or a long-term model. So forgive me for not having a succinct question, but that's what I find myself kind of struggling with. I love everything that you've communicated and shared with us. I love all the research and the thought that's gone into this process. And I guess I just want to know kind of what we can grab on to as a really vibrant community.
Okay,
Hi,
well,
I'm unmuted now.
thank you for that, Amy. And community outreach and engagement. And by community outreach, I mean both information going out and information coming in, right? Equally important. That is a challenge for us that we are wrestling with now and committed to invest significant resources in. So we don't have an answer to that question, but we do have a recognition of the need and are working very hard on it, and would really welcome your input on that. So encourage you to stay engaged on that question in particular. Sharon, can you go now?
Yes, I think
Okay.
I've been unmuted. Well, you all knocked my socks off, and I'm so grateful. The coverage and the depth, the data, and the ideas were pitch perfect. I hope everyone in my community and the 8 towns have the opportunity to hear the full presentation. I don't know if you recorded it, but I would really love it if you did record this again in whatever form you can, so that people can share that it's inspiring. And perhaps part of the public comment period would be having people listen to the whole presentation, even in person or online. And then without your having to be there all the time, Lucy, but at the end of the presentation, then you can take maybe groups of people to, share comments like you have with us, but some manageable size. And maybe, there would be 10 of them, but you would really hear the comments within the context of that new information. I think it's terrific, and thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Beth Dean. Beth, if you could just let us know what town you live in, and then have at it.
So Beth, you'll have to accept the unmute and then we'll be able to hear you.
Can we get her unmuted, Marion?
Yeah, I have the option to ask her to unmute, which I selected, but it's not unmuting her. I think she has to. There we go.
We're still not hearing you, Beth, sorry.
There you go, Beth.
I think Beth may have given up on us.
Yeah, well, she's still muted, so I'm not sure. Mary, it looks like you're having trouble unmuting people.
Some people are able to unmute, and some aren't. So Patrick was muted, but now Patrick is available. So
Patrick, go ahead.
I think it's that settings.
Let's say, just for the purpose of my question, that the districts merged and we chose, let's say, option 1. Can you walk us through like a very top level overview of what a schedule would look like from today through, let's say, the first academic class? Like, how long does that take?
Right, so let me understand. I want to make sure I understand the question, Patrick. I appreciate it. So option 1 being that you form a single K-12 regional district.
Or let's say option 2 rather. Yeah, the one where it's just the high school.
Okay, so a shared high school.
Yeah.
But I think the timing on this is going to be really important to be very mindful of, in that there's an active statement of interest that's in place right now in Berkshire Hills for the renovation / construction of that high school. And so that process will likely be, we'll have some signal, I would assume, within the next 2-3 months, maybe sooner. The regionalization process, I think, can move as quickly or slowly as a community decides to engage in it. I know Ken has been involved in this work probably more than anyone. Sarah Carlton's on the call, has been on this. I mean, this can take 2 or 3 years. So what would typically happen is that the way that the regional planning board, regionalization process works is you're all in sort of phase 1, step 2, which is you're making a very broad determination of a direction you want to go. And I think that's where the board is right now, making a decision around a direction. What would happen next then would be the development of an educational and operational plan. That plan would also come associated with a new regional agreement. All that information would ultimately be acted upon by the towns. So that would happen in terms of a formal vote. So there are some steps, and certainly all that also is happening in concert with a conversation with the Department of Education, who ultimately has to approve all this and support it. So the shorter answer to your question is you can move really fast if everyone's on the same page and you agree to it. But if, depending on, all the steps, and I think in this case, getting, as was pointed out earlier, a high degree of community engagement, input, investment in the options, it's certainly that could take some time to get there. So Ken, I don't know if you want to jump into this conversation, just in terms of your own experience with regionalization. Not to put you on the spot, sorry.
That's okay. Your 2 districts are not that different, especially economically, which is often one of the big stumbling blocks in districts trying to come together to form a larger regional school district. Then you have to decide who wants to join together, and then you have to write a regional agreement. And in the writing of the regional agreement, you go through all of the concerns. What schools, how many, grade level, enrollment, who's a member, who's not, and so on. And if people meet on a regular basis and are engaged and really have a common vision of what they want to achieve, you can move through it fairly quickly. But the reality is there's a lot of things to talk about. And the devil's in the details. And if you get those details correct, it's really a long process of negotiation between the towns on how to form a larger district together. But in my experience, you can acquire a certain momentum doing it, and you can acquire a certain enthusiasm. But it's not something you're going to do in 2 or 3 months.
Mary, can we try Beth once more? Then we're going to go to Dennis Sears.
Beth is unmuted.
Thank you. I apologize.
That's
I had
okay.
I had a setting wrong. I just wanted to thank you. It was an incredible presentation, great information. I think there's a lot of compelling reasons for us to pursue a vocational or technical school for the two districts. I'm just kind of jumping in now to this conversation a little bit late in the game, I think. But I'm just wondering if there's going to be a time when we discuss other models, perhaps other than a vocational or technical school. And I saw that there's another Zoom meeting. I don't know whether it's tomorrow night or at a later date. Just wondering if that's going to be the same presentation or whether that will be something different.
Yeah, there's a meeting on Wednesday at 5:30. It's a different presentation. It's going to begin with a summary overview of all the work that Jake's research team has done over the last 9 months. And then there's going to be an opportunity for planning board members to really sort of dig in to all the reports we've read over these 9 months, discuss them, and have again some public comment at the end. So that's what's planned for Wednesday. And then we're going to have another meeting probably late March, early April, when the team is going to present some modeling around the 3 options that are under consideration, which are merger of pre-K through 12, merger of just high schools, and third option, more formalized collaboration. So those are the 3 sort of broad models that are under consideration.
Okay,
That's
thank
the
you.
plan. Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. Dennis.
Yes, this is Dennis Sears. I'm a member of the Southern Berkshire School Committee, I'll disclose. And I want to congratulate Jake for bringing forth really what is an expanded version of what was going on. I mean, to be quite frank, I've always felt that to just consolidate the 2 districts was going to be a very, very tough sale. Okay. What I like about what Jake and his team has brought forth and talked about today is that it's a broader thing where, you know, I think there's an awful lot of work that would be involved, and it would probably even lengthen the time to make something happen. But it's something that, you know, you can do something for not just the education of our students that are here in Southern Berkshire, but also to attract more businesses to Southern Berkshire. Because what was really presented tonight is the concept of, okay, let's do something that basically expands beyond just putting 2 districts together and into something that basically I think we can get, you know, existing businesses in Southern Berkshire to be very interested in doing by, you know, the type of a solution that they have kind of laid in front of us tonight, which was a little bit different than what I had expected to hear about, other than the three choices, which everybody has kind of heard about. But I think there's a great opportunity here to make something good happen that's good for everybody, including everybody in the community.
Lucy, we have a couple of hands up, Andy and Justin. Thank you, Dennis.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Dennis, for your comments. And yes, Justin Haley, you're up.
Yes. Hello, Justin Haley from Great Barrington. I come from the opposite side, and some people seem to be coming from, and I'm not in favor for the combination. And I would go to the first public comment to kind of step back, but I do believe we just witnessed an advertisement this evening for one specific direction. And I think it should be noted that these are people that are being compensated for their work in this direction. I think there are a lot of small details that get lost when we think of getting into that one high school, of potentially solving the problems that are happening with our building facility right now. And I think that this isn't the answer to that problem. And quickly, I can think of, consider your students, your children that you have in the school district, how they say they are an athlete. We just reduced our opportunities in a combined district. There's less spots on the sports team. We are now down to one sports team in this region for that given sport. That goes down the chain for musicals, debate club, whatever it may be. So I think that we need to be very slow and careful in considering what's being presented to us. And I would encourage people to realize that in some ways this could be looked upon as commercial. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Andy Fedorov.
Hi. Yeah, I'd like to say that I think that some of the things that we think are so similar are actually dissimilar. I believe the districts are distinctly different in some ways in achievements and goals. I don't think that we can achieve them together.
Lucy,
Thank you, Andy. What town are you from?
Ashley Falls.
Okay, thanks. Jake, do we have any more hands up that you see?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, so Ken.
Sorry, Nadia.
Oh, okay, Nadia. Nadia. Go ahead. Hi.
I'm hoping to get my camera in here. Here we go. Yeah, hi, I'm Nadia Maycook. I'm a senior at Mount Everett. I am fortunate, I think Amy said, I was able to participate in a focus group and in in the surveys, and I've appreciated that this group has tried to get a lot of community input. I've tried to express it, and I feel like I've been heard, but I think just considering, I guess, the urgency, which really, when we're talking 2 or 3 months, we're picking a direction. To me, it seems like, all right, I guess this is just the time where I'm going to keep repeating this anyway, just to make, I guess, my voice heard. I do appreciate what people are saying. It's hard for me as a young person, just as to think about my future in these options, because I'm hoping to live here in 30, 40, 50 years. And I'm just trying to picture really right now what it looks like to me is that I'll have to be telling, my kids, yeah, I went to a school that no longer exists. And I went to the Monterey Kindergarten, which closed, I think maybe 10 years ago now. And I don't remember much of it, but I know, the feeling of having a school which is no longer there. And all I have to say for it is that our community rallied and we tried, but at the end of the day, right, it doesn't make financial sense. And, there's plenty of presentations and figures and facts which showed that it didn't make sense. And I think similarly here, we're seeing, it doesn't make sense to keep trying to run 2 very small schools. But I guess this is kind of just a request to all those people who are kind of seeing this and just feeling kind of like a little desperate. I think there's a lot of people who would feel similar to me who are kind of just, we don't know what the 4th option is, but we're hoping that at the very least, we're able to, keep our high schools, keep our elementary schools open. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Nadia, and thank you for your letter to the editor, which we all read over the weekend. It was very good. So if there are no other hands, Ken, I think you've got time in the next 4 minutes, if you can get it back up, to show that ending video.
All right, let me see if I can accomplish this technically.
Okay, well, you were a teacher in a technical school, so we all have faith in you.
You're really putting me on the spot now.
MTI to me means career. It means stability. It means be able to function in the real world from what you've learned in the class.
We're seeing a widening gap between the needs of employers for skilled workers and the availability of those skilled workers. Minuteman Technical Institute provides an opportunity for folks to fill that gap through the training programs that we offer, that students can select from to further their technical education and propel themselves into industry. MTI does not have a typical student. MTI welcomes any student who's open to learning and following their passion.
I really love working on cars because it's like a giant puzzle. After 2 years of going to college, hated what I was doing, and it was like really defeating because my heart wasn't in it. When I made the decision to come to MTI, it was exciting to know that like I would be focusing on only what it is that I wanted to do. We were able to just like dive right into like hands-on stuff out in the shop. I currently work at Toyota in Lexington. It's exciting to be able to apply what I'm using at work and then at school, and like it finally all makes sense. I really love it.
Why did I choose electrical? I was working in sales for 3 years, and with the downturn, with the pandemic, I ended up getting laid off. And I love doing things with my hands. I've always been a tinkerer, right? And the instructors are really top notch here. I certainly didn't expect really the speed at which I would be able to be ready to get out into the field. The field is always looking for new people, and that demand's just going up and up. Before I ever graduate, I'll have paid off my schooling. I can't say the same for my college degree. I'm still paying it off, but I absolutely believe this is going to be my career. I enjoy doing this.
I was teaching full-time for 10 years. There was just something that wouldn't go away, and it was the fact that I just always wanted to do hair. So once I found Minuteman Technical Institute, I was pumped because that was the only way I was ever going to get this done. I really like the program because of the small class size, and we get a lot of one-on-one attention. Right now I'm working in a salon that I absolutely love, and it's a great opportunity to like put together the skills I've been learning in class and practice them with people. And it sounds corny, but I'm like legitimately so grateful because they have a night school program that was affordable, and it just opens doors for you.
Our students develop confidence, develop friendships, develop relationships, develop networking skills. Our job is to make sure our students are ready for their dream job.
For anyone who's thinking like it's too late or they're too old or they don't have time, MTI is one of the best decisions I've made.
I'd strongly encourage you to take the same leap that I did, because quite frankly, I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else at this point.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn. Nadine Hopper.
Oh, I'll second that.
Thank you, Tara. So I need to go through the roll call vote. Charlie?
Yes.
Lucy, yes. George? Tom Burkle?
Yes.
Steve Bannon? Deb Phillips?
Yes.
Peter Taylor?
Yes.
Don Coburn?
Yes.
John Silbert?
Yes.
Laura Rodriguez?
Yes.
Jane Burke?
Yes.
Tara White?
Yes.
Bonnie Silvers? Nadine Hover?
Yes. Yes.
Thanks, Bonnie. Nadine?
Yes.
Great. Colin Smith?
Yes.
Patrick White?
Yes.
Marie Ryan?
Yes.
Molly Thomas? Roger Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.